My name is Naramata Dushyanthan, and this is my Psychology 101 oral report. The topic which I have chosen to discuss is whether punishment is an effective behavioral modification strategy in children. First, I'd like to give you a brief overview of exactly what punishment is. Now, punishment is defined or referred to as an outcome or consequence of a behavior which weakens the probability of the behavior occurring again. Punishment may be of one of two forms. Firstly, negative punishment involves the removal of a stimulus that the organism wishes to experience, such as a favorite toy or article of clothing, whereas positive punishment typically involves administering a stimulus that the organism wants to avoid, such as a physical shock or spanking, or an unpleasant social outcome, such as being humiliated in front of people. So, now that we've discussed the basis of punishment, let's consider how this relates to the chosen topic. The article I chose is based on a research paper written by Dr. Joan Durant and Ron Ensign in 2012. The article is Physical Punishment of Children, Lessons from 20 Years of Research. Now, what was the reason for the experiment? This paper drew upon the issue of whether physical punishment is an effective method of disciplining children. In particular, the paper focused on the relationship between physical punishment enforced upon children and the negative developmental outcomes which these children faced in the future. Although physical punishment was considered to be an acceptable method of eliciting behavioral compliance over 2 decades ago, nowadays such punishment is often considered to be a form of abuse. Furthermore, in the wake of this issue, there has been rising concern for children having to endure such violent conditions. Now, what was the aim and hypothesis of the paper? The aim was to determine whether physical punishment inflicted upon children and youth plays a purposeful role, or whether it will lead to negative behavioral developmental problems. The hypothesis was that majority of the children exposed to physical punishment may also be exposed to abusive behavior, which goes against their rights as individuals. Now, who were the participants? Several studies formed the basis of this paper's arguments. However, many of the studies revealed highly and relevant yet reasoned outcomes. The studies discussed all involved children and youth of differing ages to discuss whether or not physical punishment is an appropriate method of behavioral alteration. The following are examples which have extenuated this idea. Forgach used a group of young boys to emphasize that the severity of physical punishment enforced by parents on children is linked to the level of aggression these children harbored against parents, siblings, peers, and spouses. This was conducted in 1991. A Canadian incident study of reported child abuse and neglect in 1998 showed that 75% of accounted physical abuse of children took place during incidents of physical punishment. Also, another Canadian study conducted in 2003 showed that children spanked by parents in an attempt to impose corrective behavior are 7 times more likely to be severely assaulted by their parents. On the other hand, a positive approach to this issue was considered by Patterson and colleagues. The study encouraged parents to observe the behavior of their children and understand their specific characteristics, rather than simply eliciting disciplinary action on their children. In doing so, the study showed many positive outcomes in terms of the capabilities, effectiveness, and psychological health of not only the parents but the children as well. So what task was the paper presented with? The key issue the paper explored was the issue of human rights of individuals exposed to abusive behavior, in particular, children living under such conditions. The primary task involved determining the correlation between such intense levels of punishment and its long-term effects upon maltreated individuals. Also, another task to be considered was the degree to which physical punishment adopted by parents in a bid to enforce effective behavioral modification may be considered appropriate. Now let's consider the results. Physical punishment may not be the primary cause of negative behavior. However, it is a risk factor in terms of the onset of child aggression and antisocial behavior. Results from several studies identified that the severity of the punishment endured by the children, whether it ranges from the simple punishment or an abusive punishment has a direct effect on the long-term behavioral development of the child. What did the research conclude from the results? Well, physical punishment should not be used used to discipline children. Instead, clear expectations must be maintained and effectively communicated through trust and a safe environment. Also, it was recommended that rather than parents simply choosing to use physical methods of punishment, they should seek alternative and positive approaches to entrust discipline in their children, and therefore encourage a positive development in their child's current and future behavior. Now, what were the limitations in the methodology, or things that could be done differently next time? In my opinion, the paper did not have any major limitations, as it managed to cover the implications of physical punishment and or abusive punishment, and the negative effects of such on children's development. Also, the paper covered various incentives to emphasize the need for more positive approaches to behavioral modification.